into your marketing? Well, I know I have. Well, hi, I'm Christine Rothdeutsch.
And I'm Barbara Menino.
And on this episode of Soapbox Wisdom, we're talking about storytelling because I have the expert here, Barbara Menino. Now, before we get started, though, I do want to remind you, as our listeners, our viewers, please like and share this episode and just share the love of Soapbox Wisdom out there. So, Barbara, let's get started here. Storytelling, as I said, you're an expert because you've been a writer for, well, okay, I don't wanna make it sound like you're old. You're not old, Barbara, I know. But you've been doing it a long time.
Good long time.
And, okay, so what brought this up for me is that, of course, I subscribe to too many email lists. I get too many emails in my inbox, and I see a lot of people talking about storytelling and whether they're teaching it or having somebody else come in and teach it for them. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Let's first talk about why we need to even think about storytelling in marketing.
It's crazy, isn't it? It just sounds like why. I would agree. And it's fascinating because as a journalist and a marketing writer for many years, as you've alluded to that, um, when I started in my own content business, during that period of time in the early years, story became a thing. So it seemed very natural that my tentacles were up to find out more about it. And I became a student of story. And now I am still a student of story, but I share my expertise and my love and belief in story with others because it makes a difference. Stories have a way of engaging people because they appeal to the emotion. Scientifically, oxytocin, dopamine, they are all generated in the brain when listening to a good story. And that means our emotions are evoked when listening to a good story. One that sets out to engage the emotions. And that makes a difference if you're trying to attract people to you and your business, or even as a corporate leader, if you're trying to enhance culture or bring about significant cultural change.
So I guess that's what I've been lacking all these years because I come from the world of tech, all the online tools, and I always said, "Yeah, it's a rather dry subject." It's like it's hard to engage people when you're talking about facts and how-tos. So, I guess it's the story, and I guess that you can incorporate it in anything, I would imagine. You just have to be, adept at seeing how to do that. So, do you have people coming to you to like somebody like me? Do you have people coming to you to say, "Oh, Barbara, I need help in formulating story into my messaging"?
Yeah, and I think that's the one of the biggest challenges. So people are hearing that story is important. They're feeling frustrated because they don't know how to do story. They don't know how to find stories. They don't know how to share stories. They don't know how to create stories. And it can become very intimidating for them, which is why I like to engagement engage them. One of the mantras of good writing is show, don't tell. And I am such a believer in story that as I talk about it, I actually do become emotional. I become very animated. And in a way, I am showing my students or clients what is involved in good storytelling and showing them why. I'm kind of proof pointing it because they become engaged. And if they step back, they can say, why am I engaged? Well, it's because she's exciting me with what she's saying. I'm relating to it. I see myself in some of the things that she's saying. See the problems she's talking about, the pain points. I see the aspirations. I want to know how to find and tell, make that show or share a good story.
Is it possible, like, again, okay, using myself as an example, sorry, uh, saying, but I don't have any personal stuff that can be turned into something interesting or exciting. Are we always looking for something directly connected to ourselves, or are we looking just for things in life that we can kind of make a story out of it that relates to the point we're trying to make, if that makes sense?
So it's both. It can be a story that you're in, it can be a story that someone else is in. If you're in it, the emphasis is not on you. It's not a woe is me tale. It's told in such a way that you're representing universal feelings. And that's how
Mhm.
you engage people. When you say to me, Barbara, there's not that much exciting in my life or things that I don't think there's a story to tell, I challenge you. I challenge many clients by saying, stories are all around you. You just have to be more curious. Be curious on steroids. Always looking, have your tentacles out. Because when you're looking for stories, you start finding alignments to things that you want to prove. For example, you probably have a point of view about the world or about life. Mine is people believe what you show them, which is very appropriate to my work. Do you have a point of view uh, about life, business, the world? And I'm putting you on the spot. So,
Yes,
you
you
know,
are putting me on. I have to process that. I'm a processor.
okay. So, but just to give that an example, we all do. When you dig deep, you're going to figure out that you have a certain way that you look at the world, and that is intrinsic to the way you do business, to the services you offer. So, as you go about your day, whether it's life or business, if your curiosity is on steroids, you're seeing little things, you're seeing tidbits that happen. And as you think more deeply, you realize that there are points to be proven through that story, through that experience, through that event that just happened to you, and something you want to share with people.
Mm.
But it's an outlook. It's looking at life through the lens of story to begin with. So you're always on the hunt, if you will, for a story.
Yeah, and I jotted down when you mentioned universal feelings. I was like, I know I've learned that this is all part of how we're sharing stories is getting our audience to be basically self-identify, I think, through
Yes,
the
yes,
story.
yes.
Instead of pounding into them, you need this or you have to, do this, do that, and everything. It's having them self-identify. So I love that term of universal feelings, so that our audience is, yeah, yeah, that's me. Oh my goodness, she knows me. Oh my goodness. Um,
She knows there's no finger wagging or finger pointing in story. It literally is a show don't tell platform. So we talked about emotions and we talked about universal feelings: sad, mad, glad, happy. scared. These are universal emotions. You talked about being a technologist, and you're very logical, which probably is
I'm trying to
related.
let that go. I'm trying to let logic go after
No,
this past
but no,
year
no,
of
no, no, no,
mindset
no.
work.
But
I'm working on it.
it's not unimportant, because people come to you maybe because they're not so logical. They can't come up with a strategy. They don't know how to put one foot in front of another because they can't identify where they are at a certain point in time and what they need. So, what if you were to tell them about a time in your life when you were starting your business and you felt all thumbs about how you'd get it off the ground? Where should you start? Where should you go next? And for some, in some way, maybe you ran into someone who said something that sparked a thought in you, and it was an epiphany. And you realized that the most important thing was to, before you figure out where you want to go, also figure out where you are now. Compare that to where you want to go, and then figure out how to get from that point A to point B. So that could be a story about logic or technology, but you tell it in story form because you felt in pain, you felt confused, you felt frustrated, you felt upset, you were angry even that you couldn't quite figure out what you had to do. So telling that story shows a time when you were vulnerable, shows your openness to share that with other people. And because of your vulnerability and your openness about that vulnerability, people are starting to say, oh my goodness, that's me. She's talking about me. And they lean in and they listen to what
Mhm.
you have to say. It's incredible, but it's so connective tissue. It's so connective tissue.
Yeah. I like when you said about knowing where you wanted to go, and we've talked about this, on many other levels too, and it's something that I believe in the work that I do of knowing your end goal. But I think when you're looking at what story, you're going with, it's like, what is your end goal? And like you have mentioned earlier, like working backwards from there. But I don't think many of us think that way. I think that way of working backwards. But I want our audience to take note of this big tip here of knowing.
So I just mentioned curiosity to find your story. And in my mind, there are three pillars to story, with being curious being the first. The second one is being clear, and I'm going to circle back to that. And the third one is being captivating, and I'll get to that. But right now, we're talking about creating a story.
Mhm.
And we talked about figuring out what you want to prove through your story. What do you want people to get out of that story? Once you determine what the outcome that you want is, then you reverse engineer and you create a piece that includes only those essential elements that again get you from point A, where you start, to point Z, where you end up. And there's some interesting stuff in between, but it's all essential narrative that leads you to an end. That's what clarity is about.
Okay, listeners, pay attention to that too. Essential elements, and this I've seen in coaching situations that I've been in, and people start telling their story, and they're adding in all these other pieces that don't add to the outcome. They're just dragging on. But that also comes up, just in when somebody gives a 30-second commercial, or, just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you. And they are adding in so many details and so many things that aren't needed. I'm encouraging our audience to think about this aspect in everything that they do of essential elements. What is essential to what it is you're saying at that moment? Uh,
Do you know, I have a little story that's a personal story that proves a business point. Of course, I have many, but this is one of my favorites. And it was when I was at the beach with my family and my granddaughter, who at that time was 8, she's 10 now. And I walked up this huge hill to a parking lot that was so busy on this hot summer Friday. And as we were walking, she was kind of on the outside closer to the traffic. And I said, Clementine, I'm going to put you on the inside and I'm going to hold your hand because I want to protect you. And there was a slight pause and she looked up at me and she said, Babby, you always protect me. Now, I grant you that was a be still my heart moment. But that said a lot of stuff beyond a grandmama and a granddaughter. It said something about business. Because Clementine, at 8 years old, had understood that I loved her, that I cared for her, and yes, that I would take good care of her and I would protect her. It's not something that I told her every time I saw her, I want to protect you. She assimilated that
Mm.
from my showing, from my actions. Well, my goodness, isn't it the same in business? We show people by being consistent with our service, the kind of service to which we will with which we will provide them.
Mhm.
So there's a story that proves the point of consistency and the fact that a story can be the window to the customer experience. It's a very simple short story. It's quite a lovely one. And whether you've been a grandparent, a parent, whether you're an aunt or uncle, whether you've had a kid in the neighborhood who looks up to you, you can understand that relationship and the feel good of that kind of a conversation. And you can then take it to a business point.
Hmm. Yes. Oh, wow. You and your stories. Geez, Barbara.
Well, because, and and I've always told them yes. As a reporter, I was always going around with my notebook. We would go to concerts with our friends, and they would say, "Oh, there's Babs. She's ready to take out her notebook and write a story." Because I was always people watching, wondering what the what the story of those
Mm.
people was. I've always had that bent, but I also have the bent to kind of elevate it. So it's more than the story, but it really, I project the feeling, which, by the way, is the third pillar, the be captivating. It is the way in which you present it that heightens the emotion. Now, obviously, if you're speaking, that's done with pregnant pauses, with speeding up your speech, with slowing it down, with moving back from a camera or leaning in close. But honestly, you can do that with writing as well by the
Mhm.
way you create and cadence your sentences. You can project the same kind of up and down flow of emotion, of exciting parts, less exciting parts, uh, in writing as well,
Mhm.
which makes writing interesting. So that's where the captivating piece comes in. And that all has to do with show, don't tell, because there's quite a bit of show in all that.
Mhm. Now, I just want to take a minute, Barbara. As I said in the opening, I see a lot of different people talking about storytelling and holding events about storytelling, maybe even having programs about storytelling. What should our listeners be looking at if they're thinking of getting help work on their storytelling? Is there anything in particular that might tell them, oh, this is somebody who can really help me, versus somebody else who maybe is just jumping on the bandwagon? I'm just saying.
So, yes, I said that I have created 3 pillars, and this is what I teach or how I mentor and guide people when I work with them. Be curious, be clear, be captivating. That's a Barbara Menino way of structuring a story. Nonetheless, those 3 points are important. So you would want to work with someone who certainly speaks to you about clarity. You would want to work with someone who suggests to you that you don't have to be so intimidated by the concept, but if you dig deep, if you look harder all around you, you can find them. And you want to be working with someone that suggests that the manner in which you present a story makes a difference to how it's received. I always say that for business owners in particular, but anyone who's trying to influence thought and behavior, when you tell your story with delight, when you are delighted by your own story, you will attract people, be they clients, be they employees, be they friends. You will attract them like a magnet to get the results you want. And in business, it is obviously to get more clients, to grow your business, to earn the money you deserve. So that captivating piece cannot be overlooked either. So you'd want somebody who talks to you about that. And you'd want someone who talks to you about the story, what I call the story arc, the up and downedness of a story. Typically, think of any of the fairy tales, think of children's books. They typically start with a problem or with an aspiration. And the main character, your client, your employee, is trying to solve their problem, get rid of their pain, or fulfill a goal that they want to achieve. And that isn't always easy. There's a lot of up and down, there's a lot of slipping and sliding. But along you, the storyteller, or the service provider, or the corporate leader comes along, and you suggest and you recommend a solution, and you begin to show them that you're the person that has that solution, that if they follow your lead, they will achieve the success that they want to achieve. And if they don't, they might not. They might fail. So you take them from the start point of pain or aspiration through the awareness that there is a solution, through the awareness that there's a person that can help them. And then when you talk about the success they'll achieve with the outcome, you give them a hint of what life will look like when they use your services or follow your lead or take your recommendation. And in that process, you're tapping into something they're already feeling, and you're getting them to a place where deep down they know they want to be. And that makes them lean in, want more, and take actions that will get them close or to the outcome that they want. And in business, it is choosing you as the service provider, as the person who can provide that positive outcome for them.
So glad you said that, when you're speaking and or even just writing something, wanting people to lean in and then take the action. It is so important to be focused on the results. Are you getting the results that you wanted? Not just having people say, "Well, that was really nice." And I take this from years ago, somebody showing a group of us a website, and it's like, "What do you think of it?" And some of the responses right away, "Wow, this is really pretty. Oh, I like this." And I'm sitting there saying, "But does it do what you need it to do? Is it going to produce the results that you need it to do?" So whether it's a website or it's a talk that you're doing or something you wrote and you're using story, is it producing the results that you want versus, "Oh, that just feels so good." I'm not that just bothers me so much when I hear people giving those types of responses. Those are not valuable. So I just caution our listeners, when you're trying something out, make sure the audience's response is what you're going for. Um, wouldn't
You
you
know,
agree?
people will often come to me. I think I said this to you once before, and they'll, look, I got a business card. I got a logo. I got a URL. I've picked the font. I know the colors. I got a brand. And I go, no, 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 no. Because what you really need is a story. You need a brand story that shares what you believe, why you believe, what gets you up in the morning to provide the services that you do to other people. You need a story and you need a message, which is a shortened version of that brand story. And you need all the content that supports the brand story and the brand message. It's one arrow to another arrow to another arrow, and it circles back. It just kind of is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's really a beautiful thing. And I will add, not only will a good story with those elements create a ripple in the marketplace, not only will people refer you and buy from you, they will even smile when they hear your name because you represent something that they can align in and believe in. And that's what a good brand does for you. And that's how the story behind the brand gives it substance and anchor and makes people want to work with you. It's very self-empowering on top of everything else. Not only connects people, but the more you tell your story, the more excited you become and you start to say, wow, I really do have a lot to offer. And it's a truly beautiful thing.
Okay, so Barbara, I was going to ask you, to wrap this up in a nice, neat bow, but boy, that was a lot you just shared. Are there any last things you want to tell our audience about story?
Believe in the power of story. Know that it's show, don't tell. Don't get up there and talk about how many years you've been in business or that you have 7,000 degrees and certifications. Show the people what's in it for them. And you do that by sharing a great story. 3 pillars: be curious, find the story, be clear, use only the essential elements, and be captivating. Be delighted in your story so that you draw people in. And I guarantee, my friends, that you will find and get results in your business, in your corporation, in your life by doing that. Nothing like the power of a good story.
Thank you for that. Soapbox Wisdom is hosted by brand messaging and storytelling consultant Barbara Menino and business and mindset coach Christine Rothdeutsch. You can find them online at Barbara